What's up, everybody? It's Stephen Williams, founder and president of the creditrepairshop.com. And, just it was a great weekend. And when you're having fun helping people, it is just, it brings a lot of joy into my life because I'm just able to give you the information of real life situations of what happens to customers that we talk to on a daily basis. And today we're going to talk about repo in the car. We get these constantly. Situations are different with everybody, but bottom line, car got repoed, or they're looking to repo the car. And people are looking for help because they want to keep their transportation. They don't want to get the car repoed. So let's go over what we help our clients with, and it's going to help you. And I'm going to use the whiteboard again on my computer. I love it, on this Surface Pro. I think it helps you understand and visualize what I'm trying to share with you. So the first thing that we talk about when it comes to repo is we have to find out in my office, is it a co-signer situation, or is it just where single owner? Because we find that in some of the situations, a lot of the people that call us are the people that actually co-sign for the vehicle. And so I want to touch on that for a second. A lot of people don't understand, when you co-sign for a vehicle, you're usually going to be in either the first place or the second place of the vehicle ownership on the loan. If you're in the first place, that meant that they would have never have loaned the person that you co-signed for the vehicle. They would have just never gave them a loan for it. But the ramifications for you is that you're responsible for that car as if you owned it. If they don't pay the payments, they're coming after you. And what I see happen is that they come after the co-signer first, because they know the person that had the vehicle, the person that was driving the vehicle and making the payments, if they don't pay it, it's like they don't really go after them. They're going to go after them in their own way, but they're really focused on the co-signer, because the co-signer is the person that made the whole deal go through. The co-signer had the good credit. The co-signer doesn't want to ruin their credit. The co-signer probably had a good job. The co-signer made the whole deal go through. So be wary of co-signing. I always gave the advice, don't never co-sign anything for anyone else, because you cannot control the situation and the life of that individual. Never, look at this, never co-sign for anything, for anyone. Never. Because you never know what their situation is going to be. I mean, just think about it. You're responsible for your own life, and now you're going to be responsible for the spending or the money habits and the payment habits of another individual. That stuff wipes over to your credit. So you don't want to be responsible for that. And we see situations where the person that co-signed had to pay the money because they're going to garnish your wages. They have a right to garnish your wages for what the individual that didn't pay the car, that was driving around with the car, didn't pay. They're going to come after you for the money. Now, if you're a single owner, then you're just, your credit's going to get screwed up, and you just need to start focusing on what you can do to get yourself out of that situation. So now let's talk about some things that you need to do to get ahead. I'm always about get ahead of the problem, because I find even in my own life, if I don't get ahead of it and just go ahead and do something about it, because it's gonna come. It's gonna be a day that that you're gonna have to deal with it. So you might as well get ahead of it. And so the ways that you could get ahead of it, and don't delay this process, because if you delay it, some loans, depending on the bank or your state, they have to take that auto loan, that repo that they're going to propose doing, off of their books in 90 to 100 days, 180 days. They have to take it off the asset side of their book. So they're going to charge it off. So you got to get ahead of it, because if they charge it off, even if you come with the money to make up the payments, they can't even take them. The best case scenario is that you'd have to buy, pay off the entire car. And in some cases, we've even seen where they can't even do that, because when it goes into this charge-off status, it's like a weird no man's land of where your loan is. It's like waiting for it to go into the next process. So the first thing that we want to do is want to try to sell the car. If it's a car that you co-sign for, I would get that car and I would look at the condition of it and try to sell it. And if you could sell it for, let's just say the car is $10,000, you sold it for $8,000 or $9,000, I would get with the lender and say, I can sell it for this amount. Will you take that and consider it paid in full? That's what I would do. And even if you could get $5,000, you could say that, because you could say this thing is heading to repo. And if it goes to repo, the most you're going to get is 40 to 50% of the car's value. So would you like to make this deal? And you'll be surprised if you're ahead of the game. Instead of having them spend money legally, they will go ahead and do that, especially if it's a local bank. They will most likely go ahead and do that. They don't want to take the car back. Next thing is you try to refinance. With local banks or with some of the lenders that are out there, these fast money back credit lenders, or that's what I call them. They're these fast stated lenders. They'll allow you to refinance, but you got to do it while you're ahead of the game. You can't do it when you're too far behind, because they don't. If they look and see that situation was just getting worse and worse, they don't want to refinance it. If they're going to just refinance it and make the whole situation worse. But you never know. You should always look at that option, because you can refinance it, buy some time, sell the vehicle, or help that individual get their situation straight if you co-signed it, or get your own situation straight if it's your vehicle, because you need transportation. Next thing is try to defer the payments. Now, I've talked to a lot of people and they've heard about deferring the payments, but they're not doing it the right way. Like, why would you do a 30-day deferment when you could get up to 6 months of a deferment? And that comes down to not understanding what's available to you, not understanding how to negotiate, not understanding that there is a hardship department with every lender that's out there in the United States. And if you're facing repossession, you can call them up, even if you're the co-signer, and you let them know that you're going through a hardship and you may have to fight to get to the right department. I was going back and forth with someone on YouTube about this, and I was like, did you get to the hardship department? And they said, well, they said they didn't have one. And I said, everyone has one. And then they called them back and they said, well, can I get to the hardship department? I have and some of them called it loss prevention department. They got to them and they were able to negotiate a 3-month deferment of their payments. 3 months. Use that money. Let's just say that your payments are $400 a month. They'll tack that onto the back of your loan, and then you're able to use that money to get yourself straight. Maybe you pay off some smaller credit cards. Maybe you use it to get caught up on the card payments, depending on what the situation. Or when you're going to get after the deferment, you're able to make the payments. You took care of some of your household bills, and then you're able to be ready for that payment. Or you just let that money sit there, and then when the time comes, you know that you're 3 months ahead on the payment. I've seen it where you could get 3 months to 6 months, depending on the bank, depending on your hardship. If you have a medical hardship or something happened with one of your family members, you just never know. You gotta talk to them about it. Also, you need to look at your contract, because there could have been some type of insurance that you paid for if you were to have a problem making your payments, or you lost your job, or you became disabled, or you had a medical issue. A lot of people forget about those insurances, but they're sitting right there. I've looked at contracts, I'm like, right there it states it, that if you had any problems, all you had to do is file a claim and your payments would be made. Which really is what's happening, is that they're deferring the payments on there. Some of them do have insurances that will reimburse the lenders. And then also you can look at your contract, and I'm going to be getting into that in the next section, is that on your contract there might be an insurance that goes directly to the dealer if something was to happen with the payment, with you as the borrower on that loan. So now let's go into they end up repoing the car. Next thing is that everything was checking out. They ended up repoing the car. Let's talk about what you can do, because at some point they're going to come after you. So as I mentioned earlier, we when I said about getting your contract to see if there was any insurances out there, get your contract. You need to review it to make sure that there's no problems on there. No problems. Make sure that the loan was correct. Double check everything. You could get out of this loan by having a technical issue with the way that the loan was either put together. They could have lied to you, anything. And even if you can't use it at that point, I'm going to show you or talk to you about how you could use that when the debt collector starts to come after you for it. So again, you look for insurances on there. And again, there could be insurances if you were to become disabled due to medical, or you could have had a loss of job, or it could be payments to the lender. We had on another YouTube video, the comments below, a lady had co-signed for a vehicle for her. Oh no, a lady was just asking a question about a repo that her daughter had, and she had mentioned in there that the dealer, when they repoed the car, there was an insurance that paid $12,000 off on the car. $12,000. It didn't pay the entire car off, but there was insurance. And a lot of people, when I talk about this, they say, well, I've never heard of this insurance being on the vehicles. Like, they'll say, I've never heard of that. And I'm like, they sneak these into the contracts. Or sometimes you're so excited about the car that you don't even know that you don't remember that you went ahead and said yes to this type of insurance. But yet it is something that is out there, and it could be named various different types of things, but the lenders can get them if there's a default. I've seen them where the whole vehicle was paid off. I've seen it where if you became medically disabled or you lost a job, payments will be made over a certain period of time. So just make sure that you look for that, and then you look in like I just said, look for any discrepancies on the contract. Now the next thing is, the car is going to be sold, and it's going to be sold at auction. And like I had told you earlier, you could avoid it, because when they go to the auction, they're going to get like 40, depending on the condition of the vehicle, 40 to 50% is of the value. Because there's no dealer that's going to buy a car, put some work into it, and then sell it you know, they're not going to buy it at a high price and then go and sell it. They usually want to get them at, you know, 30 to 40%, 50%, depending on the vehicle. So that shows you that you could have went right here. You could have went right there and tried to sell the vehicle because you know now that this is about what they're going to get, if not less. I would always start lower because they don't want to have to pay the fee to go and take it to the auction, you know, because the bank doesn't do it. They hire someone to do it. So they're actually in a losing proposition when they go to do this anyway. So you might as well make the offer if you're able to. I would make them any offer that you can make. Also, you could turn the vehicle in, because if it's not a hostile repossession where you turn it into them with the keys, that makes the whole thing better. They don't have to get keys made for the vehicle. Like a whole bunch of things could be avoided if you get ahead of it, and if you have to get a vehicle back, you can you know, try to sell it and give them the difference, or give them what someone is willing to buy the vehicle for. Okay, now let's say that everything checks out. Everything checks out. So they got the car, you know, you know, you wasn't able to cut a deal. You wasn't, you couldn't sell it, couldn't refinance it. You, let's just say you did defer the payments, or you wasn't able to get the deferment. There was no insurances, you know, nothing was working in your favor. Next thing that's going to happen is they're going to send it to a debt collector. You should immediately request validation of debt. Now, depending on your state, first thing you need to look at is your statute of limitations. Look at your statute of limitations, because maybe this loan was a lot longer than, you know, it took them a lot longer to do the process, and maybe the lender doesn't send it to collectors in a reasonable amount of time. You just never know. You always want to check statute of limitations. Statute of limitations is different in every state, and you want statute of limitations for contract law, because you may not be legally responsible for the debt anymore. Next thing is you want to validate the relationship, and you're doing this at the same time. I don't want to, you're looking at this, but you also at the same time you want to do the relationship between the lender and collector. Did they buy the loan, or are they contracted to collect the debt? Did they buy the debt, or are they contracted to collect it? If they are contracted, first thing you want to do is notify of your situation. Why did the debt, did the auto repo, why was the vehicle repoed? What was the circumstances? Because when you do that, you can trigger a 1099-C filing. That's where they forgive the debt. And when I always use the word trigger, because the lender, when the debt collector is contracted by a lender, there's certain, they set up a standard on what they're going to consider collectible. They're going to set up a standard on what they would do as a settlement. They set up all of these standards so they won't have to go back and forth to ask questions of the lender. They don't want to be, as they get all of these loans that went bad, they don't want to have to keep calling someone and saying, hey, can you do this? Or, hey, what about this? Or, hey, what about that? So they put all of these triggers in. And so if someone says, well, I had a medical situation, they could kick it back to the lender, send it back. Lender triggers it and says, just send it to forgiveness. We're going to write off the entire debt. We're going to send a 1099-C to the IRS and make that debtor responsible to pay taxes on that money, which you may not even have to pay taxes on it. You just need to get with your tax whoever does your taxes and ask them on. There's ways that you can even have that amount not added to your income. But so it could be medical, it could be loss of job, it could be any situation that shows in hardship can trigger that loan to be sent right back to the lender, and then the lender is going to go ahead and just forgive the debt and write it off. If they purchased the debt, they purchased the repo debt of the vehicle, which is, you know, one thing that's crazy about this is that they purchased a debt that had an asset to it, which is a vehicle. The lender would not loan on that give the money unless there was an asset attached to it, which was the vehicle. Now you have a debt collector that's purchasing the debt from a repossession, and they're purchasing debt that has no collateral attached to it. So we already see that there's some problems that can work, problems that they have that can actually work in your favor. So now what you're going to do is you're going to make them validate everything. You want the contract. You want payment history. You want the contract showing you have to pay them. So the contract between you and the debt collector, which they're not going to have. They're going to have a contract where they purchased the debt, and then when they reveal that, you can see what they purchased your debt for, which backs them into a corner to negotiate settlement, because they're purchasing this debt for pennies on the dollar. And you want to get ahead of this, because if you get to going into court, you're going to raise their costs, and you're going to also potentially have to have an attorney unless you're comfortable going into court to argue your side. And from what I've learned is that a lot of the attorneys don't even know anything about dealing with debt. You know, the contracts and the different things that must be proven in court. They're just basically, you'll get in there and they'll argue, yeah, it was a contract, and they don't know to ask for all of this stuff. So you have to even get the right type of attorney to even do that. So now I'm going to end with some motivation for you. You know, when I wake up and well, first let's go when I go to bed at night, is that I start to visualize how I want my life to be. I go past visualizing by the day, like what I want tomorrow to be. What I visualize is what I want my life to be, how I want things to work. And I think that that's very important, and let me tell you why. Because I think that if we don't strive to get our life the way that we want it, we're wasting time. We're wasting time. But I think that the reason why we don't push is hard is because we fear. We fear. And when I say fear, we fear what other people might think about us. We fear that it might not work. We fear that we have to invest money. We fear that all of these things can, just depending on where you're at in your mindset, the fear could be different things. I'm going to tell you that you have nothing to fear. And I'm doing this in my life, so I'm not one of these people that just tell you things, you know, like everybody can say, you know, what other people need to do in their life, but they don't have the power or the motivation or the will to even do it in their own life. I do this in my life on a daily basis. And so when I go to sleep, I'm visualizing what I want for my life. But I do even, it's more of a step of I'm visualizing myself in that life. So it's more than just saying I want it to be this way. I'm visualizing myself in this. What that does for me and what it'll do for you is when you're visualizing you in that life, it forces you to make decisions. Decisions. Either to do something or not do something. And there's things that I woke up, I went to sleep with visualization and I woke up with instructions. I guess my mind ran through them while I was sleeping, but I woke up with instructions that I'm going to be doing today to make changes in my companies. Today, it will be done today. And the reasons why I'm doing that is because I want my life to be a certain way. Now, I do have a very good life. I have a lot of freedom. I don't work the way that other people work. You know, I run my whole show, but it's still not exactly the way that I had visualized it. So now, instead of wasting time, I'm going to move even more towards that direction. And I invite you to do that same thing for yourself. Don't worry about what other people think. Don't worry about if it's going to work out or not. If you have a clear vision of what you want, it will happen. I cannot tell you how long it'll take. I cannot tell you if it'll be something that happens quickly, but I will tell you that it will happen. It's almost, I would say it's impossible for it not to happen. If you put your mind to it, it's impossible for it to not happen. So if you have any questions about repossessions, have any questions about credit repair, please post your comments below. Visit my website, thecreditrepairshop.com. If you need to get your credit reports, I have a link below. You can click that link, get your credit reports, because you should know what's on your credit reports, all three of the reports and all three scores. So again, this is Stephen Williams, founder and president of thecreditrepairshop.com, and thank you for your time.